Welcome to part 2 of this 3-part series where I show you how to create a Space Blaster game from scratch in Scratch. In the previous video, we set up our project with the sprites that we were going to use, and we also coded the movement functionality of the player as the broom and the computer as the bat. So if you haven't seen part 1, I suggest you go back and watch that part first. In this video, we're going to allow the broom to fire basketballs at the bat and have the bat shoot apples towards the broom. So let's start with the basketball and broom sprites first. We want the player to be able to press the space key and shoot basketballs from wherever the broom is. So let me click on my basketball sprite and let's start coding. We need to detect the event of a user pressing a key, and I think the space key is appropriate for shooting a basketball at the bat. Now, how do we get the basketball to show up exactly where the broom is, no matter where it is? Well, in the motion palette, we have a block called GoTo that we can use. But instead of go to random position, we can select the sprite that we want the basketball to show up at. So we can have this basketball show up or go to the broom sprite. So if I press the space key, the basketball should appear exactly where the broom is. So let's press the space key, and it's not appearing. And the reason for that is that right now the basketball is hidden because I hid it in the last video. So I have to make sure that when the space key is pressed, if the basketball is hidden, we have to make sure that we show it. Let's have it go to the broom first and then show. I think that makes a little bit more sense. So now when I press the space key, the basketball appears right where the broom is. But it appears to be really big, so once again I'm going to use the set size block, and I'm going to set the size right before I show it. Let's set it to 40%. And now when I press the space key, we have the basketball appear exactly where the broom is. If I were to move the broom to the right and I press the space key again, the basketball appears at the correct location. So now we want the basketball to drop from here towards the bat. So we have to use the change Y block. We want to change Y by a negative value so that it goes down towards the bat. So let's say that we change Y by -10, and we could use a repeat block in the control palette. So we could repeat this a bunch of times, let's say 10 times, and we have it moving towards the bat. But now I gotta kind of guess and check how many times I have to repeat this to get closer to the bat. So when I press the space key, the basketball appears where it's supposed to be, and then it drops down. Now, while we could get this to work, I think there's actually a better way if we have the basketball drop or change Y by -10 until it touches the bat or it touches the edge of the stage. So if we go over to the sensing palette, we can bring in touching, let's say, the edge of the stage first. So now when I press the space key, the basketball should appear exactly where the broom is and drop all the way to the bottom of the stage. So I don't need a repeat block. I'm already anticipating a bug that I'm going to experience, which is if I want to drop multiple basketballs, like for example, I'm trying to drop more than one basketball at once, even though I'm pressing the space key multiple times. So I'm going to have to do some pretty advanced stuff here. I think the best way to do this is to create clones. So we can create clones of sprites, so we could have multiple sprites that appear to be the same, that have the exact same functionality each, but we can create more than one at the same time. So I believe if I go into the control palette, I can create a clone of myself. So now what I want to do is when the space key is pressed, I want the basketball to create a clone of itself. And when I start as clone, so if you go a little bit further down, we have this hat block. When I start as a clone, now I want the basketball, the clone, to go to the broom and start dropping. So now I should be able to drop more than one basketball at a time. But notice that as soon as one basketball hits the edge, they all stop. And it looks like my browser is frozen. So this is kind of an interesting bug to try to solve. So this is actually a weird bug because I just reran my program and it looks like it's absolutely frozen. Yep, I just got a page unresponsive error, so I'm not sure exactly what's going on. I'm going to click wait and see if it resolves itself. And it looks like it did. So if I press the space key again, we have the same issue where everything's frozen. So right now I'm pressing the keys and my basketballs are frozen in midair. Now, I'm not sure exactly why this bug's occurring, but maybe it's because there's too many clones on the screen and it just slows down or bogs down the entire browser. So maybe what I can try doing is at the bottom of the control palette, if I delete the clone, as soon as it's done touching the edge, maybe that'll help. So let me just restart this program. And if I start pressing the space key multiple times, it looks like it's actually working. I think that might have been the problem then. And notice that we still see this first basketball from the first time that I ran the program. So to get rid of it, I just have to click on the basketball and hide this one. So I just restarted my program, and it looks like my basketballs are flying down from the broom whenever I press the space key. So it looks like everything's working, and they're disappearing as soon as they touch the edge. And it's not freezing up the browser anymore. So now I'm thinking that as the basketball drops down, it can check to see if it ever touches the bat. So once it touches the edge, it's going to delete the clone. And if the basketball touches the bat before it hits the bottom edge, then we know that the player won, or the broom won. So I can broadcast a message that I can use later on. And let me name this message Broom Wins. The reason I'm broadcasting this message to all the sprites in the backdrop is because I want to use this Broom Wins sprite that I created in the first video. And I want to make sure that when I receive Broom Wins, that I choose the correct costume. Let's switch to the costume Broom Wins. So when that happens, it should say Broom Wins, but once again, when I click it, nothing happens because the sprite is hidden. So I have to make sure to show that the broom wins. Lastly, I want to make sure that when I start the game, it doesn't say the broom wins if the broom just won. So I have to make sure that I hide this sprite right in the beginning. So when I click the green flag, my text goes away and I'm able to play this game. So now let's see when it touches the bat if it works correctly, and it looks like it does. When the basketballs touched the bat, it said the broom wins. So now the functionality for getting the apples to be fired from the bat is going to be very similar to what we did for the basketball and the broom. So instead of recreating all of these blocks again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and hover them over the apple, and then when I let go, my code is going to be found in the apple. So I don't have to rewrite it. All I have to do now is just modify it to make sure that it's correct. So the apple shouldn't go to the broom, it should go to the bat when it starts as a clone. And we're not going to check to see if it's touching the bat, we're going to check to see if it's touching the broom at any point. And if it does touch the broom, then we're not going to broadcast broom wins, we're going to broadcast bat wins. And in my winners sprite, when I receive, let me just change this, when I receive the bat wins, I'm going to switch costume to bat wins. Now I'm almost done, but I just realized that the player isn't going to be pressing the space key for both the bat and the broom. And I also just realized that we have to change the Y value by +10 so that when we do start as a clone, the apple fires towards the top. Maybe when we start the game in the events palette, when the green flag is clicked, we want to make sure that I guess the first thing we should do is we want to make sure that we hide any apples from the previous game. And then what we want to do is fire apples from the bat clone as it's moving along the bottom of the stage. So we can start the game and then wait 1 second and then create code that has the chance of firing off this apple. As written right now, it's just going to keep firing apples every 1 second. Which is not exactly what I want. I kind of want to have a chance at not firing an apple. So let me stop this for now, and what I want to do is use a conditional, a wait block, the random number block, and the equality operator. And what we'll do is choose a random number every second, let's say between 1 and 3, and we can see if the random number chosen equals 1. So a clone will only be created if the random number chosen equals 1. So let's try this out. Let me hit the green flag. All right, so maybe 1 and 3 doesn't look that good because a human user is going to probably be firing off more apples. So let me change the pick random number to 1 and 2. So now there's a 50% chance. So now when I run my program, we should see hopefully more apples coming out of the bat. And it kind of looks like that's happening. I could also change the number of seconds to wait in between basically a coin flip. Every half second there's going to be a 50% chance that an apple comes out of the bat. And look at that. The apple hit the broom and it says that the bat wins. Now there's just a couple things that I want to finish up with. I want to make sure that when the basketball hits the bat or the apple hits the broom, the entire project stops. So I'm going to create another broadcast. Let me create a broadcast and let's name it End the Game. So I want to make sure that I also broadcast End the Game if the broom wins. Let me just bring in this broadcast and select it. And now every single sprite, when it receives that message, should just maybe disappear or hide or stop. So when I receive, let's say, End the Game, every sprite should hide. So let me just create this. Let me bring this or drag this over into the broom, into the bat, into the apple, and not into the sprite that tells us who the winner is. So let me restart the game. And now if I drop a whole bunch of basketballs and it touches the bat before I touch the bat, or before I touch an apple, I should say, looks like I won. Oh, whoa, the bat's still firing apples. Why is that? Well, actually, if we go into the apple, we'll see that when it starts as a clone, let me just move this down. When it starts as a clone, it always shows. We have to make sure that when the game ends, all of the scripts stop running. And I think in the, not in the events palette, but in the control palette, we can stop all of the sprites. So when I receive End Game or End the Game, we are going to stop all scripts. And I think this should work. So let me just rerun this. And I don't think I have to put it on all of them. I think I could just put it in one sprite, which is going to be the apple, which is fine. Because when it receives End the Game, it's going to stop all the scripts. Let me just rerun this game by clicking the green flag. And oh my gosh, look at that. We have a pretty big bug. And that is that the bat and the broom don't appear when the green flag is clicked. So we have to make sure that our code or our programs have the show block inside of the green flag is clicked event. So we want to make sure we show after we go to the specific locations. Same thing with the bat. It must be that when the green flag is clicked, we're now making sure to show the block before we start picking random locations to go to. So I think I covered everything just now. Let me try this one more time by clicking the green flag. And there we go. We have our major players. And the bat hit me with an apple and it wins. Now it looks like the broom is still able to fire basketballs. So we have the same issue. But luckily we don't see apples coming out of the bat. So let me go over to the basketball. It looks like when I press the space key, it ignores the fact that the game is over and it still fires off basketballs. But for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to leave it in there for now. It'll be a bug that I ship with the game, and I just want to make one last change to the entire thing. For my backdrop, this can't be a space shooter if the backdrop is not space. So I'm going to go over to the backdrop palette and let's choose the stars. And now when we run this game, let me make sure that in my code I have, I detect when the game starts to switch to the correct backdrop. And now our game is working exactly as we want. The broom wins and everything's gone, unless I press the space key, at which point we'll see a basketball move towards the bottom edge of the stage.